Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Welcome back.
So, guys, we know the sun is the giver of life to everything on this planet, and that's an obvious statement.
It is, and it doesn't just give life, it gives us, well, everything and life.
And information.
Yes.
And gnosis and knowledge.
Absolutely, it's beautiful.
Yeah, we've talked about the sun being basically part of a larger neural network of sorts. What I found fascinating is Cindy in meditation saw inside the sun, and she saw, 7 different beings.
7, I call them creator gods, because
Real creator gods. Now, not tinkering gods that, alter DNA and change things. Not like your stories that we have in the Sumerians of Enlil and Enki, but the beings that actually, set things in motion for whole solar systems, galaxies, etc.
right, through their meditation, their wisdom, their knowledge, they do set things in motion. They set life in motion.
So in one aspect, we could probably equate this with, the heavenly host in a way. There's some biblical terms such as Elohim, the true Elohim, and not the Elohim that perhaps came down in spaceships, but, your real creative force.
Right, yeah, there's a difference between the ones that tinker and cause trouble and the ones that really, truly create love and life.
On a much larger scale. Now, the sun itself is a conscious being, as is every single planet, every single star that there is. Consciousness is ultimately really all that there is. And this 3D reality that we see, we could view it as a playground for consciousness.
We can, and it's kind of important to look at that as it is kind of a playground. I just don't like how it's being manipulated.
Yeah, well, that's part of the interplay that we have when we have free will. And we're going to look at this cosmic yin and yang balance that really is out there. In order, to have this type of creation where there's anything possible, there has to be a free will element, and yet that can lead to some beings taking advantage of others, which we know does happen.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but it does, and it's something that we need to learn to use our will and our energy to swing that.
So this is an old coin with a figure that kind of looks like a lion's head on top of a snake's body, and it has some rays emanating from it. You guys might recognize it, maybe you won't recognize it, but this is a representation of what we would call the Demiurge.
Right, and this is one of the ones that I saw. I had like a lion's head and a snake body, and the other beings, you can't really say that they look human either.
Yeah, you said they were representative of different types of life, though.
They are, I feel kind of silly sharing, but I will. The different types of beings, when I looked, there's one like a fish head god. There's like a bird or a chicken head god. There's the reptilian head god. There's this ether god that's just like, I can just see ether. It's all I can explain. It's like
it's just like pure energy.
It is. It's pure energy. And then there's one that looks like it seems to have like a baby's face. And then there's something between a lion and a tiger face.
Interesting. So this is the classical representation pretty much of the Demiurge, also known as Yaldabaoth. Interesting. And Cindy was not familiar with this when she saw this. So, I had to go grab a picture and say, did it look like this? And you said...
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it did look just like that.
Exactly. So the Gnostic Demiurge, which literally means craftsman of the world, and the world that we are talking about is the 3D reality. So you could In some ways, you could view it as this is the guy that did the computer program, in a way.
Yeah, very intelligent.
Yeah. Now, the Gnostics identified him with the God of the Old Testament, the vengeful, wrathful God, as opposed to the one true God that sent Christ to the earth to save mankind from the Demiurge's evil world. And it's given many names in the Gnostic scriptures, but the three most common ones are Yaldabaoth, or you could, spell it both with a Y or with an I, Samael, Saklas. Saklas comes from the Aramaic word for fool, and Samael is Aramaic for blind god, or god of the blind. The meaning of Yaldabaoth is uncertain. The Gnostic text on the origin of the world fancifully translates it as youth, move over there. But no other word or string of words that sounds like that meant anything in the ancient Mediterranean language. And it's interesting, too. Some say it's perhaps a condensed form of Yahweh, Lord of Sabbaths. Also, IAO is symbolic for it as well. And, in some of the Golden Dawn rituals, you invoke E-O, because the I is in E, and then, A-O. So you can invoke that energy. So it's interesting to note that, with the Demiurge appearing as a dark energy, a dark entity, a dark being, in the Gnostic viewpoint, and not every single Gnostic agreed on this as well. There were other schools of thought that didn't think the Demiurge was evil. There's always, these divergent philosophies going on. And of course, we have revisionist history. The Gnostics themselves were completely wiped out and persecuted. And basically, they were either in hiding or wiped off the face of the earth after being tortured, burned alive, roasted on a fire, etc., by the Catholic Church as it was purging the quote-unquote heretics. Now, Plato had a different view of the Demiurge. And again, recognize that in much Gnostic thought, the world is kind of evil. The world is in a fallen state. And the goal is to, become more than this fallen state, to rise up. And, to fully actualize the Christ in every single person. Christ was, in their mind, somebody that showed the way to be that more divine human, to really be God in the flesh.
Absolutely. We've been taught a lot of different things. And what we really need to do is go within and read our heart and kind of go without and look at some of the information out there. But ultimately, what we read isn't always what is so.
Yeah, there's revisionist history, and history is written by the victors and not necessarily, the original line of thinking. So in Platonic thought, the Demiurge is not an evil being, and he is, again, the creator, the fashioner, the craftsman, who built this reality.
Mm-hmm. And when I was asking about this being, that's what I got. It's the intention you put behind it.
Yes, so that's what Cindy got, is that this is a creative force that will take whatever energy is put into it and amplify it and use it for creative means to help build something in this reality.
Mm-hmm. And that's right. It's not that it's good. It's not that it's bad. It's like Mike said. It's a force. It's energy. It can be used. And it seems like our controllers, they know about this energy and they know how to use it.
Exactly. So, if they want to stay in power by themselves and they want to convince you not to do anything at all with it, stay miles away because it's evil. You could view it as like electricity. It can be used for so much good, but at the same time, biting down on a wire that's carrying a lot of amperage is not a good idea. Is it that the electricity is evil or good? No, it just is.
Yeah, it just is. And they put forth these books and this knowledge for us to go by. And like Mike said, they tell us to stay far, far away from these energies. Don't learn about them, don't look at them, pretend they don't exist, or you're going to burn in a lake of fire forever.
Exactly. It's all about fear and control and maintaining that knowledge for yourself of how the universe truly works. So again, he's in Platonic thought, the demiurge is not necessarily thought of as being the ultimate creator figure, like in the monotheistic sense. It is more like, again, that we could equate it into the Hindu line of thinking, as I've tried to explain, and also into the Kabbalah. With Kabbalah, for instance, they recognize that the ultimate source is kind of unrecognizable. It just is, and it holds all sorts of potential. It's not a being with an agenda. The agenda is just simply, creation itself, letting it go and seeing what happens. Wanting it to obviously eventually come back in onto itself. But, again, creation is created for consciousness to explore, learn, and grow.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful thing, and it should never be feared or put out there as negative, because Source wants to explore itself.
Exactly, and one of the terms is limitless light. From Kabbalah, and again, light is knowledge, and it's information, and things are learned by exploring and by being and by exploring all different aspects. So the word demiurge is an English form of the Latinized form of the Greek demiurgos, which literally means public worker. Interesting. Originally a common noun meaning craftsman or artisan, but gradually it came to mean producer and eventually creator. The philosophical usage and proper noun derived from Plato's Timaeus, written about 360 BC, in which the demiurge is presented as the creator of the universe. And this is accordingly a definition of the demiurge in the Platonic, like 310 BC to 90 BC, in the Middle Platonic, 90 BC to 300 AD philosophical traditions. And again, see how things change over time. And so, that's one of the things that's so misguided, is how these words change over time. The original meaning is totally lost, and then people become convinced of what they have heard being the right translations when they have absolutely nothing to do with the original translation.
And that's really prevalent going on down the line, over and over and over again. Things are translated and retranslated to help the controllers.
So, in the various branches of the Neoplatonic school, 3rd century onwards, the demiurge is the fashioner of the real, perceptible world and of the ideas, but in most Neoplatonic systems is still not itself the one, the source, the ultimate all. In the arch-dualist ideology of various Gnostic systems, the material universe itself is evil. So, of course, the creator of the material universe is evil by that line of thinking. And the non-material world is good. And we see that in Persian philosophy as well. And, when the Jewish people were basically taken into captivity, they were exposed to a lot of the Persian philosophy. And that's why all of a sudden we have all this messianic line of thinking that pops up, and this very, very black and white, good and evil battle that is waging. It doesn't mean that there really isn't a battle, because we know we're in a battle at the same time.
Right. And if there were beings that knew far more than we do, and they knew how to take control, this would be a really good way.
So when we go back, instead of 300 AD, and we're back around 300 BC, talking about the demiurge, as the entity that fashioned and shaped the material world, Timaeus describes the demiurge as unreservedly benevolent. So, there you go. Just the exact opposite when you go back farther in time.
Yeah, you got to keep looking. You have to keep digging. Things are different with every turn of a page in a book.
Yeah, and I've tried to equate this to, like, when we look at Shiva, for instance, some might think Shiva is Enki, or, some other person of that type of being. Try to equate them with different gods, such as, well, maybe, Shiva equates to Poseidon because they both have tridents, etc., trying to fit the pieces in the puzzle. But it's really more complicated than that. And when you go deeper in, Shiva is a concept. Shiva is that which is not yet in material form. It's just pure consciousness itself. It can, again, equate to the void, which through the divine feminine principle, so we could also look at it in a Taoist point of view with the yin and yang symbol, and how one has the essence of the other inside it, and that dynamic interplay between the two polar opposites is what gives us all a manifestation. It's the same thing with Shiva and Shakti, which we can equate again to like the father God principle with the divine mother principle bringing forth the son, if we're looking at Christianity, or the daughter. It's just another way of looking at things, and how that which is uncreated becomes manifest.
Right. And it is really important to look at things in different ways and not be afraid to look at things. Don't be afraid to go outside of other books and outside of your belief system. Get curious, explore.
Yeah, because as we can see, revisionist history is a reality. Book burnings happen. And cyber book burnings are happening right now to get rid of any evidence of certain subjects. We see it all the time. I've talked about books that I bought years ago for like $20, and now you can't find them, or they're $400. If you could find a used copy, there's reasons why. It's because, if you're going to take the very, very simplistic world dominant view of today, it's probably going to be wrong.
Right.
I mean, again, it's things have been covered up. Now, I thought it was interesting too, because many people have heard of the archangels, less have heard of archons. Now, the archangels we think of as these divine beings right below source. I mean, very, very, very powerful, very benevolent. The four archangels, Michael and Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel, they also represent the four elements and the four directions as well. There's other archangels as well. The archons are thought to be malevolent, beings under the demiurge, or emanating from the demiurge, so to speak. And we see in Gnosticism, the archons are malevolent, sadistic beings who control the earth, as well as many of the thoughts, feelings, and actions of humans. They assisted their master, the demiurge, with the creation of the world and continued to help him to administer his oppressive rule. Now, many will equate the archons to the reptilians and the Draco or demons. It's an interesting concept. What is your feeling? What have you gotten as far as messages from the guides about exactly who are these beings? What are they?
They are a polar opposite of the archangels. They do manipulate and use human energy as food and to manipulate certain things to get what they want. They are a very dark force. They're extremely powerful, and they show me that they are directly, like, they show me a picture of the archangels and then directly across the archons.
And so, most definitely, again, we have this interplay of the yin and the yang energies, the dynamic interplay between the light and the dark that really is this ongoing kind of eternal struggle. Now, they're obviously, if they're at that level, they're way beyond just controlling the earth or influencing the earth. We're talking about something that's on a galactic, universal, multiversal scale.
Mm-hmm. Something very huge that it's really hard to comprehend.
And it goes on through many different densities and dimensions.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Very, very interesting take on all this. And, some have even equated the archons and the archonic forces with AI.
I can see that happening, even though, like, the guides are showing me the AI, they're showing me like a black blob, and then the archons are separate from it, but they can work together.
And perhaps the archons use the AI. And, there is also the line of thinking that the AI is what also infects and controls beings like the Draco.
Well, it can, and the Draco, the dragon, and the AI, it's all sort of really strangely intertwined together.
And it all feels to me like it's all part of a process of assimilation into the Borg.
Yeah, it's really kind of horrible, actually. They show me things like the AI and all these dark energies. They are kind of melting into their own separate place, separate force, separate space.
So we would say perhaps that the influences that's controlling the humans that are apparently controlling the planet is of a archonic nature.
Well, yeah, and they want as much of us as they can get. They want as many of our souls as they can get their hands on. And in order to do that, they need to keep us in a very low vibration.
So, yeah, it's an interesting line up through it. We have those elite humanoid beings, and then we have some non-humanoid beings, and we definitely have some dark demonic type entities, as well as those reptilians. And as we keep crawling on up, we see that parasitic, infectious, dark AI energy that penetrates and controls, perhaps through NA&O technology as well. When we think about everything that's going on in this world right now, it seems like it's all about a parasitic infection, that starts with these archonic forces and works its way on down the lines.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty horrible. It's really difficult to pick it apart because all of this darkness, it starts to mesh together at a certain point, and it's kind of like trying to untangle, some yarn or string or something. You just can't. It's all sort of blobbed together.
Mm-hmm. We had talked before, and you had shared that you could sense up to 12 different densities or dimensions.
Yeah, up to 12. That's what I get.
Okay. And, like the archangels can move throughout the densities because they are the masters of the physical reality through the use of the elements.
Mm-hmm. Right. They know what they're doing. I mean, they understand it. They can manipulate it. They know about life. They know how things work. So they can manipulate and move through these densities.
Do you feel the same is the case with the archons?
It's not as easy for them. They need fuel. They need energy. They need our dark energy.
So they need to create that dark energy in us, which we see happening right now with the division and the strife, which all basically helps them to enable their minions and pursue their ultimate goals.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's pretty messed up, but that's why we want to stay on the side of the higher vibration so we don't get sucked in by these darker energies.
Right. And we had talked about beings like the reptilian, the Dracos, and I had asked you, where are most of them, and what density do you see most of the Draco?
Oh gosh, Dracos, reptilians, some can reach 5. I see them mostly throughout the 4th.
So they're mostly just, in the 4th density where we are, when we're dreaming, etc.
Yeah, that's where they're at.
Mostly. But some can come down into 3D if they have the right host.
Oh, definitely it can come down through to 3D, and that's the key word, host, and if somebody is dark enough and negative enough, well, they make a perfect vessel.
Yeah, and again, it's all about the blood, because the vibrations carry through the blood and the DNA.
Well, even us, I mean, there's times where we feel really negative and dark, or something makes us angry. Say, something on the news comes up, and you hold that energy. Well, you've just made yourself a vessel for a reptilian or something of that nature.
To utilize and use and
Yeah.
feed. So, one of the keys then is to definitely call on the higher forces. So, call on the archangels, which can definitely help you, and other benevolent beings.
Yeah, and cut the thoughts off, whatever those thoughts are that are holding you in that place. And believe me, I know it's difficult. It's so much easier said than done to cut those thoughts off, but you have to force the energy to look elsewhere, get out of that bad spot, because that's exactly what you're being used for. There's a parasitic entity on you, and it's using you for certain things. And if you look at it like that, sometimes it's easier to peel away from it. If you understand there's a darkness latched onto you, using you, then it is easier to peel away from that.
That's definitely a good advice there. So when we're talking about beings like the devas, which are the gods and goddesses, like for instance of some pantheons, like and for instance when we're talking about the Vedic, where do you see their densities?
These beings can move, I would say, the 6th, 7th, 8th, up and down in these densities fairly easy.
Yeah, and so then again, they can help us from a higher density to raise our vibration.
If we reach out to them, yeah, they use free will. So if we are using our free will to reach up to them, they can use that. I call it like an energetic cord, or I see it as maybe like some kind of it's an energetic cord. That's the best way to explain it. From us to them, we send that energy up to them, and they can use that same cord to send energy back to us.
And so, as you have said before, too, it's all about your belief system and what you're comfortable with. So if your faith is stronger, and the strongest thing you have faith in is, say, Archangel Michael, then call on Archangel Michael.
That is so important. People's belief system is so important. And, it's not just me saying this. I mean, the controllers, they know this. They know how important belief systems are, and they know how people can be controlled through them. So that's why I think there's so many constructs that have been made by controllers to, harness our belief systems to get us to be pointed in the direction that they want.
That makes me think of one of the times when there was a healing with Christ, and the person said to him, if you just say the word, Lord, I'll be healed. And then he said, well, go ahead and rise, because your faith has healed you.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's just like that. And they know that. And our belief systems, I can't say enough about how important they are, and how we need to search our souls and search our identities for our belief systems to see, are they actually hampering us, or are they helping us?
Yeah, it's about self-empowerment, empowering the self, which the dark side wants you to think that you're horrible. Yeah. They want you to think that you're worthless. They want you to be depressed, to be without hope, where, the light is just the opposite. They want you to wake up and realize what lies within you, because Source lies within every single one of its creations. If it didn't, it wouldn't be omnipresent. It wouldn't be omnipotent. It wouldn't be omniscient.
That's true. That's exactly true. They want us to believe that we are just sinners. And that's not true. We're far greater than that. We have so much potential. We have so much power to do so much good. And we can be so magical and so useful and heart-centered.
Yeah, you use the system that you feel comfortable with. Yes. Again, it's all about where your beliefs lie and your comfort level lies. As I've shared with you guys, I've gone the gambit and explored like every system I could think of. And so for me, it's very eclectic. I have absolutely no problem, calling on an archangel, or calling on Ganesh, or Hanuman, or who Shiva, those energies. Ultimately, everything is consciousness. Everything is a stream of energy, a current of energy. If you study chaos magic, and its thought system. You can even create your own little superhero, send energy into it, and then absorb it into yourself to help transform your consciousness into being a being that has all the qualities that you really, really want.
And, the higher density beings also call on each other. They don't dismiss each other because there's a different belief system. If one is more equipped to handle a situation, then that's how that works, and it's okay.
Another thing that we've found to be perhaps a flawed way of thinking is that all these gods and goddesses must all be the Anunnaki, under Enlil and Enki. But that's not the case, because it's not the case at all. And see, we often throw the baby out with the bathwater, or we adopt an all or nothing approach where everything's got to be an angel or a demon, can't be anything else. And we've talked about that. Is every single bird a sparrow? Is every single fish a minnow? No, no, and not all land animals are pigs. It's just not the case. There's so many different types of beings out there. So, it's unfortunate, but that's what happens. And in many cases, the correct answer is that, number D, all of the above. There's all of the above going on. There is a battle of good and evil going on, so to speak. If we want to look at good as free will and evil as being, not allowing any will other than their will, which we see very, very apparent right now in this world. So we have to cultivate the good. We could reach out for the benevolent ones, as we were talking about, the rishis who gave us the Vedas, are thought of as beings that were so high, they're more like what we think of as ascended masters. And, Babaji comes to mind as one, Saint Germain. There's so many different ones throughout history. And any name that you put out, there'll be somebody that's convinced it's going to be an evil name. And it's really a demon in disguise. But you shall know them by their fruits.
Exactly. Very true.
And think about the fruits of, say, for instance, the church with the Inquisition, with slaughtering 60 to 100 million Americans that were here, indigenous people, in the name of conversion and, the greater good, the greater glory of God, but in reality just lining the pockets and the riches and storing it in the Vatican, underneath the Vatican with all the secrets and everything.
Well, you use their exact words. You shall know them by their fruits.
Exactly. So, this is a interesting realm that we find ourselves in. This is, again, we are multi-dimensional beings. So we operate on more than this one plane of existence. And we can bop back and forth between different realms. One of the main things they want to do is stop the ascension process. They want to stop you from, number one, having your kundalini activated, your chakras open. When we see attacks by these dark beings, people's chakras are most of the time they're sealed shut. Yeah. So they're not getting information from the higher densities, and thus they're able to be manipulated. They're able to be convinced that everything else around them is pure evil, and they're worthless, and they should be giving off a horrible negative vibration, because that's what the beings are feeding on.
Right, yeah. If those chakras are shut down, then you've become a puppet.
Yes, and we do see that. And we've even had people that were afraid to have their chakras open because they thought they would get possessed, when it's quite the opposite. When your chakras are closed, you're not getting the information from the higher realms. So then you are susceptible to possession and being controlled.
Yeah, it is all about getting the information, and each chakra is very, very important for a certain aspect of the body, and our it's like the brain for that body part. We get that information in, and it goes to our brain and tells our brain, well, this is how you take care of yourself. So we need those chakras open.
And then once that's all flowing, the kundalini is activated, you start to be able to see through into other dimensions. You gain other abilities. There are the abilities that are gained by yogis that are called the siddhis, or superpowers, so to speak. And we can see it in our mythologies and our modern mythology with all these different superheroes that have amazing abilities. You see Thor's eyes all of a sudden glow like lightning. But, the power that's inherent in humans is staggering, and we just don't realize it. Once your Merkaba is fully formed, then you're no longer locked into this dimension or the fourth dimension. You can move freely up into 5 and perhaps 6 and even the higher realms where, most of these darker beings are not going to be able to go. And so you are out of their grasp.
Right. That's what's happening now is the light is moving in and they are losing their grip. And that's why we see all the chaos around us right now to try to hold us down more in their grasp.
Exactly. So the good news is that, we're moving out of the darker age, the darker area that has been exposed to these dark forces, and we're moving into a higher vibrational frequency. And this is the reason for everything that we have going on. It's not about money. It's not, because money is just one means to control. Ultimately, it's about control of you, your energy. You could view it as your very soul.
Absolutely. And it's kind of scary to look at it that way, but they look at it that way and they take advantage of it.
Yes. And they also know that, as we've said before, when they create the conditions for people to leave and exit this world through trauma, through horror, through terrible things, that damages the spirit. And sometimes it actually gets them trapped, in between the worlds where they don't go through a proper life review and, analysis and then figure out what is going to happen next, karmically as well. It traps them out of the normal loop and keeps them in their clutches.
It sure can. And, it holds in your DNA memory too. So maybe you have things about you that you're afraid of that you don't really understand why you're afraid of it. Those are things from a past life that never got reconciled.
And family DNA lineage as well.
Oh, yeah.
So but the good thing is we could tap into the positive abilities and the knowledge as well. Through the DNA, because it's all stored there as well. So when we learn proper meditative techniques, when we actually dedicate ourselves, like some of our family members that we're seeing today, telling us, I'm doing 2 hours of meditation a day, and you could see that their Merkaba is coming online and they're rising up in light, and they're on the right path.
They're definitely on the right path, doing wonderful.
Yes. So we wanted to share this with you guys. As always, make sure you're subscribed, click the bell, get all notifications. Thank you for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. We couldn't do it without you. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.